So let me first of all introduce everyone who's here as a representative of the program as it currently exists, and that's myself. I'm Jay McClelland. We have Elise Kleeman, who is a scientific program coordinator at the Woodside Neurosciences Institute, and Rami Abadi, who is the student services coordinator. And we also have Eshet Margolik and Tyler Benstu, who are going to say something to us about what it means to them to be trainees in the program. I'm especially appreciative of their willingness to join us today for that purpose. I would like to let those of you who are here to learn about MBCT just sort of introduce yourself so that those of us who are on the call have had a chance to maybe see your face and hear your name and know what your interests are before we get started. So yeah, so Grace, please.
Yeah, hi. My name is Grace. I'm a second year PhD student in applied physics, and I work in the material science department with Professor Guosong Hong. So the project that I'm working on is very intersectional, and it works at the boundary between experimental neurotechnology, I build brain-machine interfaces, and computational neuroscience. Yeah.
Great, wonderful.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, let's see. Effie, you want to introduce yourself for a second there?
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Effie. I'm a first-year grad student in the psychology department working with Jay. My current focus is on bidirectional reasoning, and I'm hoping to, in the future, kind of integrate both modeling aspects and neural aspects into the study of this issue.
Great. Lily Montes, please introduce yourself so I know your name better.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Layli Mortazavi. Thank you. I'm a first-year psychology student working with Brian Knudsen, and I'm interested in understanding risky decision-making in context of addiction. I currently work with fMRI, but I also want to work with some other neuroscience techniques and would love to kind of be able to apply computational neuroscience to those.
Okay. Andrew, I think I've left you for last.
Oh, hi, I'm Andrew. I'm a second year PhD student also in Jay's lab, and I'm interested in deductive reasoning and strategy formation, and I'm trying to expand my research into understanding more of the computational neurological mechanisms that support these kind of processes.
Okay. So let's see. Rami, did you have a specific plan about when Tyler and Eshed would say things and how that would fit in with the flow of the presentation? Perhaps I should just do a brief overview first and then let them say a few words?
Yep,
okay.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, okay. So before I do that, I want to just say that at this moment, I am extremely mindful myself of the oppression that many members of our Black community in America are directly experiencing, and I have found myself swept up quite a bit over the last few days and thinking very hard about how people like myself can contribute to addressing these very pervasive issues that, of course, go back to the days before our country became independent and sort of have persisted, up to the present and don't seem to be successfully addressed even 150 years after the Civil War. So it's a very important topic for me and many others in the community, and I'm one way of acknowledging this is something I'm going to do myself, which is to participate in the Vigil for Black Lives that the president and the provost of our university have called for this afternoon at 5 p.m. So I just wanted to express my solidarity for Blacks and others who are oppressed in America and around the world, and encourage everyone to participate in thinking about these issues and taking action as well. Having said that, today we're here to talk about the Center for Mind, Brain, Computation, and Technology and its program. And the key thing, that I like to emphasize is that MBCT is a community, and it's a program where members of the community come together to express, engage, and extend their own interest in understanding. I use the phrase for this, the emergent functions of neural systems, through the integration of empirical research with computational, theoretical, or engineering approaches. So this is about, so mind and brain sort of hopefully captures this a little bit. It's about the idea that we seek to understand mental processes as emergent functions of the neural system, but in terms of their underlying neural mechanisms. And then computation and technology is there to capture this idea that we're going to be bridging this effort not only through empirical studies, but also through linking them to computation, theory, and technology. And so this is something I myself have been involved in for many, many years, since I started realizing that computational models could help me understand aspects of human cognition, and that the ones that worked the best for me were the ones that actually were inspired by what I knew about the brain. And so this has been a pervasive influence throughout my career, and something that I continue to celebrate and work to extend. My role here is to invite others to join me in this process. The MBCT student membership is intended to bring in you, the students, the people who are especially, I think, ready to begin to assume participation in this community. So, when I was a first-year PhD student, I attended a meeting with my department chair, and he said to all of us, "You are no longer part of this problem, you're part of the solution." And it really struck me as engaging, motivating, and okay, so yes, I'm here with, those who have been at it for maybe 50 or 60 years, to contribute to this effort to understand, in the first instance, aspects of the mind in my case, but the kinds of questions that we seek to answer in the MBCT. And it's been especially rewarding to me since I've been at Stanford, because so many students across a large range of departments, neurosciences, psychology, bioengineering, other departments in the engineering school, applied physics and physics, computer science, and we even have some people from material science and chemical engineering in the program now. And so statistics, I hope I'm not leaving anything out, but it's a very, very broad set of communities where people feel like they have something to bring to this, and they also wish to engage with the others who have other complementary things to bring. So this is what the community is all about. And then more specifically for students, we also sort of think of the community as providing a context that is intended to support you as a student joining this enterprise to stretch beyond the traditional boundaries of your department or lab so as to, you know, do a bit more of the integration of the empirical with the computational, theoretical, or engineering side. And so many people are coming from a very strongly computational background, looking to gain more experience with the empirical findings and research methods, and others are coming from a stronger sort of base in empirical science and knowledge of the literature towards integrating computational approaches. And that was my case. I was an empirical scientist as a PhD student and young assistant professor, and then found myself needing to move in this other direction. Okay. So, whoops. Whoops, sorry. There's a little lag, so I'm not sure which page I'm on here. Okay, here, program elements. So, as somebody who wants to join the program, we're asking you to articulate how you wish to stretch yourself and how you would find yourself able to best engage with the community and contribute to it. And the stretching element involves things like saying, oh, I don't have as much background in a certain kind of statistical method or in the use of computational tools or in some mathematical approach or in the empirical knowledge of how the how the medial temporal lobe memory system works in the brain or any of these different kinds of things. I want to stretch myself to gain more about that. I am going to commit to finding specific training relevant to that and to then building on that to integrate that into my research. And this process of integrating it into your research is one that often involves engagement with a professor or research scientist whose expertise complements that of your PI, of your advisor. I myself, Rummelhart was the guy who complimented me. In this regard, he taught me everything I know about computation and modeling. And I brought the empirical side to some of our work, which was a tremendous synergy. So I think that's part of where this comes from for me. So anyway, those are two central elements. And then the third element is the engagement with and contribution to the community. And this is where you're part of the solution comes in. As I said before, this is something where we've been very blessed by having incredible role models in the students who've participated in the program in the past who've helped in this respect. So maybe this is a time to hear from a couple of these role models. I don't know which of you was going to go first between Tyler and Ashet, but let us know what your plans were with that. Or
I don't know that Ashet or I coordinated, but I guess since I'm muting myself first, I'll chime in.
Okay, cool.
Hi all, my name is Tyler Benster. I'm a third-year PhD student. I'm co-advised by Carl Dijsselroth, where I do all my experimental work, and Cheryl Druckman, who coaches me on theory and computation. I've been a part of the MBCT community actually since before I was at Stanford. I remember on my PhD interview week, we were able to actually attend the MBCT symposium, and that was my first introduction. And then while I was applying to Stanford, I actually had come across some of the MBCT previous symposia that were listed on YouTube, and had watched some of those videos and was just like really inspired and impressed by the community. And so as now a trainee or member, I forget what we're calling it these days, I've been really blown away, I think, by kind of both aspects of the programming as well as the community. So for me, the participation has really been about not just sort of some of the structure in terms of when you write the application and sort of get some buy-in about your training plan. I think that's really important. And for me, coming from a program that traditionally has been a bit more focused on neurobiology, sort of having the mandate from MBCT that says, no, it's really worthwhile to invest your time in some of these mathematical and computational training tools, has been important for me to sort of be able to get programmatic support and program credit, frankly, for some of the courses I wanted to take. But then I think in terms of community, this is, I think, one of the sort of really awesome aspects of it. It's not just community with other MBCT affiliates, which is like an amazing group, and I really enjoy discussing with them. But it's also kind of the exposure and the ability to sort of really talk to speakers and other people that are brought in by MBCT as peers, which has been just so inspiring and cool. You know, to go out and get lunch with someone that, you know, you really look up to, and to have them sort of treat you with such respect and really engage with your ideas, I think is just something that I'm tremendously grateful to Jay, to Rami, and to Elise for sort of bringing these people in and sort of creating this atmosphere, and also very happy this year to start helping with that atmosphere, as well as one of the students that's helping to plan the seminar series. And so I'm happy to go into more detail about any of these things that I mentioned, or answer any other questions, but I just want to give kind of a brief blurb about what this program means to me.
Thank you, Tyler. That's fabulous. Thank you. Ashed?
Yeah, a lot of what Tyler said, it resonated with me, and I've had a similar trajectory. I should say I'm Ashed. I'm a fourth year in the neuro program. I was actually Tyler's host when he came and interviewed and came to the MBC symposium that year. I remember that pretty clearly. I'm co-advised by Colonnade Grill-Spector, who's in psychology, and Dan Yeamans in psychology and computer science. And I've been part of the MBCT trainee or mentorship program for a couple of years now. And the thing that I kind of want to highlight from what Tyler said is the sense of building community, not just within people that are already at Stanford, but also outside of it. So outside of Stanford, I remember when I first kind of talked to Jay actually about my research, he recommended all sorts of people to email or talk to or read papers of that I might not have known about because they weren't in the same building or department. And then when I got travel funds to actually go to conferences and to meet some of these people and to talk with them, it really kind of widened the realm of what was possible for me in terms of getting people to give feedback about my work and inspiring new directions for my work. And that kind of gets built on and added to by speakers coming to Stanford and getting to talk to them at symposia or at the Monday night seminar series, or going to lunch with those speakers beforehand. The other part of community that I thought I could uniquely speak to is what I've done to try to build and amplify the community here, which is helping to co-lead the Computational Neuroscience Journal Club, or CNJC, which is something that I and my co-leader, Tucker Fisher, inherited from Chris Stock and Saurabh Vyas, who initiated this program totally on their own with the support of Jay and MBC at the time. And it's a bi-weekly meeting of students and postdocs who are interested in topics in computational neuroscience. And it's been valuable to me as something that is totally student-led and initiated, and we have complete control over how we want to run it and how we want it to benefit the community. But MBCT has been 100% behind us in terms of helping with logistics, funding, getting food into people's mouths, and helping keep it alive in times where it's been more difficult to coordinate. So this experience that's been a super valuable part of my overall Stanford experience has been made directly possible by this sense of community that lives in MBCT. So I'll say that for now, but echo what Tyler said, but I'm happy to expand on any parts of that.
Fantastic. Thank you both. That's excellent. That's very helpful. Let me continue to say a tiny bit more about the program, and then we'll open it up for questions. So maybe this is a moment to say something about the evolution of the program before I go into the details of this page. When I first got here in 2006, I made it my mission to create the center, and I was lucky enough to have some support from the central administration based on an ask that I made when I was being recruited. And my first activities were to obtain an NSF research training grant, then called the IGERT program, which was funded in 2008 and allowed us to provide actual stipend support for trainees for a few years. All of that money has long since run out. And now we are predominantly supported by the Neurosciences Institute and by small additional elements of support from the schools of humanities, social sciences, medicine, and engineering. And with this support, we have less money to give, and so that's something that's sort of changed a little bit. In addition, when the program was actually funding students for 2 full years and students were being supported by the NSF, there were reporting requirements and things like that that we had that, as things have evolved over the last few years, had begun to seem a little burdensome, both on the students and on the faculty. And so I was very strongly influenced, I guess, urged would be another word, to think carefully about, what we're asking of students and then what we can give to sort of make all of this work. And the guiding philosophy for me in all of this is, to try to put what limited resources we have in those places where they can do the most good. And secondly, to really expect that as members of the community, you will follow your commitments that you sort of make in your application, and we won't have to monitor you as though you were, I don't know, it feels somehow a little bit not like you're part of the solution part of it, it's like grading undergraduates or something. And so we're sort of graduating from that model. We're not asking student members for, annual progress reports anymore. What we are offering, though, is to be there in case you need support, right? And this is, E.J. Chichilnisky was very helpful in making me sort of realize that this is really the role that we want to play. We want to be here both financially, if you need specific financial support especially for some moderate cost element of research expense that would really make your research work in which you can't get access to otherwise. And also, though, as to follow up on what Eshet was saying, to offer you specific thoughts about who you might reach out to or what particular solution you might find to, a particular interest or goal that you have, right? So the support part, this is the financial part of the support part, but I guess it should also say, I'm here, and I'm here to guide you towards other members of the community, faculty members, advanced trainees, anybody who could additionally provide you some support in getting you to access to whatever it is that you want. So So now just to the details of this particular slide. There's our resources are sufficient for us to say, well, for everybody who goes to the trouble of articulating why membership in this community is going to be of value to them, we can offer you $1,500 to travel to some event or participate in some workshop or anything of the kind without, additional sort of, I mean, it has to be relevant to your goals, but this is something you just state briefly in an email and it gets approved administratively. It's a one-time $1,500 contribution. That allows us to retain additional funds that we can then allocate per specific proposed request, which would be limited to a page so that we're not burdening you with a lot of effort, but which I would basically review myself. And we're setting aside some funds to allow for that, so that in any given year we might be able to provide a total of about $15,000, just to give you a sense of scale. So on your side, the contract is that you will sort of essentially, by virtue of sort of signing on and joining the community, you will sort of have said to us, yes, this is something I'm taking on. I'm going to remain involved for 3 academic years once I join the program. So basically, most people join as rising second-year students or maybe rising third-year students, and that means that they'll usually be here for the full 3 years. After, I do find that the most senior students tend to need to focus more on their dissertation research and are less involved than the ones in the, the first 2 years after joining the program. But toward the end of it, there's this element of really wanting to hear back from you. What have you learned? Can you present to the trainees in our seminar series and share what you've learned and what insights you've had through your research as part of the process of being a contributing member of the community? So this is sort of the contract. Let's just see what then we ask of you for the application. So there's some applicant and demographic information, some of which is optional. And then we're going to ask you to answer some questions like, well, how would student membership enable you to stretch yourself according to what I've said is, essentially within the overall purview of the focus of the center. What's your research plan? And it's important for me to say that this is not intended as a 10-page research proposal, that you would send off to the NIH for a fellowship or something. It's a brief statement of your overall research plan. And I think we should, maybe the wording here should be more like that on the slide. So brief statement of overall research agenda, maybe a better way to put it. How you would use your travel award and any other funds you might anticipate applying for without prejudice that you would actually have to use them in that specific way. But I've thought about it a little bit, and here's what I'm thinking, right? I might really benefit by going and visiting that lab or something like that. And then your plans for engaging with and contributing to the community. So how do you see yourself being able to, do something like what Tyler is doing or what Ashed is doing, or something of your own completely independent kind of conceptualization that you think the community might need? Now, you may not know what that is at this point, but you might have some thoughts. And often enough, when someone is in there, they've been a trainee for a year, they realize that there's some gap, something new that can be added. And, so the CNJC was an example of this. So Saurabh and Chris, independently conceptualized that this would be a really useful contribution, and they approached me about it, and I was so appreciative of that kind of activity. So I'm not saying that the application has to have what you're ultimately going to do in it, but I would like to see some thinking about it and how you might contribute, because part of that is your way of acknowledging that you understand that that's part of what being a student member is about. We encourage people to seek secondary mentorship. Sometimes they say it as opposed to a secondary mentor, because sometimes there were 1 or 2 students in the program in the past who've gone to visit like 4 or 5 different labs over the course of their time in graduate school to get specific exposure to techniques that they then brought back, for example. Most people, have a more specific engagement, and it's also optional because many labs are already kind of interdisciplinary labs at this point. So, but we ask you to think about that question and encourage you to exploit the opportunity to reach out for additional mentorship. Okay, so we need to know who your primary mentor is, and we ask that the primary mentor also write a brief statement supporting your application to be a member. So this is just basically an acknowledgement that that your PI knows that you're doing this and is supportive of your doing it. Now, while I'm on this application components page, I want to say one other thing. This is not intended to be a competitive application process. It is intended essentially to be a kind of a formative application process, whereby in the process of engaging yourself and thinking about the application, you develop your thoughts about your own program. And sometimes people's applications are less developed than I think they ought to be. And instead of just rejecting them, I tell them that, and I ask them to revise their application to be more specific, or to address an element that was completely left out, for example. So, we are not seeking to select a small number of people to join the program. We are seeking to engage anyone in a PhD program at Stanford who wishes to participate to the extent that we possibly can, and to the extent that they have demonstrated a real understanding of what it is that they're committing to doing when they apply. Okay, let's see. So the application timeline it's due on June 30th. They'll be reviewed in July. Rami's holding office hours, and I'm available. Send me an email and we'll set something up if you'd like to talk to me. Yeah, so I think that's everything that I wanted to communicate to you guys today. And now I'm really interested in hearing, what your questions might be.
Yeah, I'll go. Thanks for preparing this slides. They were very informative and helpful. I guess I just have a question that's related to the minimum university operations in response to COVID. To what extent do you see these limited operations affecting the MBCT community and how it operates in general?
Great question. We have been thinking a little bit about this. So we had a planning meeting for the Monday evening seminar series, which we discussed this kind of issue at length, because having a full house in the room that we used to use is no longer going to be possible. And of course, now that the Neurosciences Institute facility is up and running, except for the asterisk of the COVID-19 situation, we also, can't fully fill all the chairs there. But we do intend to start having in-person participation to the extent possible. And of course, we're going to make sure that everything is accessible, via video conference for those who can't attend in person. People are not going to be on campus for extended periods. I don't know where all of you guys actually are, right? I know that Elise is in San Diego because I recognize her porch roof ceiling there. I assume Rami's in San Francisco, given the background. But I happen to be here in my Zoom room in Palo Alto, but yeah, so it doesn't matter where anybody is, and as far as like the intellectual exchange of views, right, and the sharing of ideas, computational ideas can be shared, and computational computer programs can be executed remotely, right? So those who do purely computational research have been relatively little impacted by this, I feel, at least for myself. Of course, those who are actually doing, neurophysiology have been profoundly impacted. And human fMRI research has also been, almost completely put on hold, as I understand it. So people are writing papers now and, getting ready for the day when they might be able to put somebody back in the scanner. And I know that, but yeah, so the university is going to be operating in this sort of at least virtual possible way. Everything will be virtual to the fullest extent possible, let's put it that way, as well as, let's have some opportunity for people to come together to the extent that that is possible too. And we're going to be, of course, following guidelines from our relevant health authorities on what we're allowed to do.
Also, Ashed and Tucker Tyler, might be able to speak to some of the ways in which the student community continues to be meeting, and also some of the ways in which this may be a kind of opportunity for new and exciting ways for our community to get together.
Yes,
thank you so much.
Oh, sorry. CNJC has been thinking about retooling to kind of both adapt to the fact that we can't meet in person, but also shifting focus a bit to help people who are thinking about doing data analysis now that they can collect new data, or writing papers, to have some more senior students that have experience with those things teach some of the younger students how they can start doing data analysis even in this time. So we're working hard on getting those things queued up, and we hope to have a few scheduled soon.
On the seminar side, I've been trying to explore a broad range of ideas. So if you are on the email list, you might have seen the call for speakers that went out that, unlike previous years, not only asked for speaker suggestions for an individual session, but also for a range of other types of formats that are actually enabled by the current situation. For example, we could imagine having multiple speakers from different regions that previously we might not have had a budget to fly in internationally. We could have people debating or discussing from two different points of view. Or you could imagine having students from a professor's lab being able to chime in the Q&A or add context and coloration. There's new avenues to include voices that we haven't been able to hear from before. Of course, there's also challenges. Like traditionally, after the seminar, we have these dinners that are a bit more intimate with the speaker, where there's this fantastic opportunity to build a personal relationship. And so we've also been exploring different ideas for how we might try to replicate some of that smaller group and higher degree of intimacy, where you can really discuss ideas without judgment and in a very inclusive and engaging environment. And so certainly if you have thoughts, would love to talk to you offline, as we're definitely looking for fresh ideas and how we can make the most of this opportunity to engage our audience in a digital way.
Yeah, sounds good. I don't have any thoughts currently, but I'd love to stay involved with it if possible.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay, I actually have to leave for group meeting, but thank you so much. I'll definitely be checking in to the recording later for
Okay.
the additional comments and questions. So
Great.
have a good
Thanks.
one, you guys.
Thank you, Grace. Really
Bye.
appreciate your involvement. Yeah.
Oh, thank you.
This might be a nice time also just, there's one more person who came after we did the introductions. Emily,
Right.
would you like to introduce yourself? You know, what year are you? Which department, lab?
Yeah, sorry. I'm Emily. I'm a first-year student in psychology working with Colony Grosspector.
Welcome.
Glad to have you with us, Emily. Okay, so those of you who are students, prospective student members, as I urged at the beginning, not only for yourself, but also for those who will listen to this later because they weren't able to attend. What questions can you imagine somebody asking, or do you have yourself that you would like to ask?
I have 2 questions. First of all, thank you for the presentation, Jay, and thank you for everyone who shared their experiences. My first question is a clarification question. So I seem to recall that in the previous application, it was required for the applicants to identify a second mentor. So, but that seems like it's loosened this year, and I guess it can be a optional choice as the student sees it benefit themselves to develop after joining the community. So just wanted to check that. And then my second question is that I'm curious, you know, aside from this kind of student to mentor collaboration, are there also like other collaborations that have been fostered within the community? For example, student to student, student to other non-member student in other departments, or even across institutions. I was curious to hear some of that experiences.
Great. Okay, so the answer to your first question is you have it right. The secondary mentorship is an opportunity rather than a requirement. And, you know, throughout, I think the whole focus is to encourage you to think, okay, we're creating opportunities for you here. If you don't want any of them, you probably don't want to join the community, but, you know, which ones are right for you? That's the way I would sort of frame it. I would like to let others speak to the second part of your question, although I have some thoughts as well. But if Eshed or Tyler have something to say about that, totally open.
I was going to just chime on the first part, and just say that I think that one of the ways that MBCT can help you is by offering sort of programmatic support. So in context of mentorship, you can definitely find mentorship most anywhere on campus just by writing a professor an email and meeting with them. One benefit of sort of getting someone's buy-in to be a part of the program is even if it doesn't mean much in the grand scheme of things in terms of, you know, accountability, etc., that someone just sort of signing on and saying, yes, I will support you as a, you know, a mentor for this, may sort of increase your ability to schedule meetings with them and sort of to ensure access. So that's just like a small programmatic detail, but I think that those types of symbolic things are important. I forgive me, I actually forgot the second part of your question. So if you wouldn't mind just reiterating, would be happy to speak to that, or maybe Eshed wants to speak to it.
Yeah, I was just curious about, you know, other kinds of collaboration that's non-student to second mentor. So for example, member to member, member to non-member students, and those kind of opportunities.
I would put no boundaries on any of that. I didn't emphasize it that much, but many students are, you know, have co-mentors who are not at Stanford. You know, I remember when we first broke that barrier with one of the very first trainees in the program back in sorry, it wasn't in the 80s, was it? It was 08 or 09 when I said, hey, maybe that professor at UCSD would be the right person for you. Oh, that was amazing. And he went there and he did a project. And so that was another professor. But, you know, oftentimes there are student to student bonds that kind of link to labs, and the PIs are like really busy running around doing all kinds of other things. And so, you know, the students kind of are down there in the nitty gritty with each other, working on something of mutual interest. And why I never restrict these things to, oh, are you a member of the Stanford community and that kind of thing. Like, I collaborate with people all over the world, Italy, Germany, China, India. So that's always something that I encourage.
I think that one thing too that we challenge our trainees to consider, or student members now to consider, is the different career paths that they might be interested in, and knowing that that's not always an academic career path, but they're all valid, they're all good choices. And so your mentorship might be, or the person that you would like to mentor you might take that in mind, right? Like if you're interested in going in industry, for example, or you're interested in going into the public sector, then having somebody that you can have as a mentor from one of those areas could be very valuable. So there's, you know, mentorship can be quite broadly defined, and it could be directly related to a research project, or it could be something a little bit broader as well.
Yeah. So let's see, Andrew, Emily, Laylee, any questions?
This has been really helpful. I think my conception of the program was more cross-department. So hearing about the collaborations across institutions has been kind of new information that has been really great. And I think I have a general sense about what stretch means, but I was wondering if you could speak to that a little bit more.
Well, let's see. I could use my own example. So when I was an assistant professor, I realized that I didn't know enough about linear algebra or differential equations, and I decided that I needed to learn that material. And so I was at an institution like Stanford where you could take a 1/4 leave from your academic responsibilities, and I did that. And I bought a textbook of linear algebra and a textbook of differential equations, and I studied these things for a quarter on my own. So I was stretching myself because, you know, I was pretty strong as a mathematics student in high school, and I just lost the thread of that in college. And I realized that this was going to be of value to me, but it wasn't going to happen without some sort of volitional sort of activity on my part to, you know, go a little bit outside my comfort zone and get that additional education that turned out, you know, to then feed into my research in a very important way. So it's like, okay, you know, I'm here in this space of trying to make progress on some scientific question. I'm not going to let some like edge between what I think of myself as and what I might possibly be able to be sort of narrow the scope of what I can do as a scientist. And not everybody is going to have exactly the same resources from which to stretch. So it's just relative to who you are and where you are. But that's what I'm looking for. And maybe we're all stretching ourselves every day, so you don't need to be intimidated by the concept. But that's what, you know, what is it that is not ordinarily going on in the space that you occupy in your home laboratory or your home context that you're asking us to help you integrate into your persona as a scientist.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
I also have a quick question.
Great.
I was wondering about the responsibilities of your primary advisor. I was just looking at the form, and in addition to just being affiliated with the Wu Neuroscience Institute, are there any kind of other responsibilities that we have to discuss with our primary advisors before applying?
I'm not sure I was aware that the primary advisor had to be affiliated with the Neurosciences Institute.
Yeah, we do ask that, but of course it's just that they have to sign up. There's no other required.
Okay.
We do ask that they, I think there's a checkbox that says that we ask that the primary mentors check that says that they agree to participate in and kind of be an active, member of the MBCT community if called upon. But I would not characterize that as a major ask of them. I mean, this is just, we do, for instance, if we're doing outreach or recruitment, that kind of things, and sometimes we call upon the faculty members in our community to help us. But yeah, it's not a major requirement.
Okay, great, thanks.
I would say that, of course, hopefully this is clear, it should be your PhD advisor in your home department who is playing this role, right? So
yeah.
For both Effie and Andrew, that would be me, for example. Yeah, so for you, I guess it would be Brian, Laylee.
Yeah, I just wanted to be clear about what we have to be discussing with them beforehand.
Yes, good question, thank you.
Oh, and Brian is already a member of the Institute, just in case you were wondering.
And he has had trainees in what we would now call student members in the past. So
quick question is, so other than the MBCT seminars that happen semi-regularly, what other regular activities are students involved in through MBCT?
So there's the annual symposium, there's the journal club. We are planning on having an annual student poster session that hasn't been initiated yet, but it's something we decided we wanted to do starting in the coming year, and maybe we'll wait until we're all able to congregate to do that. Maybe not. Maybe we'll end up doing it virtually if it turns out that that's needed. But that's the list that I have of things that might be construed to be sort of regular. At the same time, every year maybe not every year, but in most years we've had 2 or 3 sort of people who were visiting who we just said, oh, there's going to be a special talk and it won't be on Monday night, but we're sponsoring this talk. And that's just another opportunity. And then students often decide to do things like host a afternoon workshop or yes, and I've forgotten that we do have a social committee as well. I should definitely mention where their role is to really just sort of engage with the student members and get you guys together to, relax and chat. Used to be in person. Maybe now it would be virtual for a while longer, but that's another element. I just want to emphasize that students have also done things like said, oh, well, we need a course in I don't know, MATLAB methods for people who don't have that. And so two of the students from, I don't know, 5 or 6 years back decided that that was something that they wanted to do. And we were supporting them with a little bit of additional financial support as TAs, or, so to cover the additional effort that they were putting into that activity at the time. So, it is not strictly not limited to those things. I also, but now that you've asked this question, let me just say that I don't want anybody to feel that even every Monday night seminar is an obligatory attendance item for them. I myself am, sufficiently interdisciplinary that I find myself wishing to participate in many different research seminars around campus. But I don't, there's every once in a while something is so far from my interest that it's not really of tremendous benefit to me to participate in that particular event. In my role as MBCT director, I participate in the MBCT Monday night seminar series whenever I'm in town. And, so that's special in that regard for me. But, for any of you, there'll be some of these seminars that are like at the fringe of your interests. And what we're looking for when we schedule them is to make sure that, they'll be interesting to about 60% of, if it doesn't seem to us like 60% of the community will want to attend, we don't want to invite the person, but at the same time, we don't want it to be limited to those who are necessarily supposed to appeal to everybody in the community every single time, right? So it's like, participate, right? But don't feel like there's a absolute obligation to participate every single time.
Jay, I just wanted to point out that it's after 1 now, so maybe be a good time for us to wrap up.
Yeah, okay. Please follow up with additional questions by email to any of us. And thanks a lot for being there. I think your questions will be very helpful to others who listen to this